yes, thank you very much for that initial kind of overview of what some of the country experiences are. I think the understanding on the regulatory side globally is a little bit different in every country. What the level of law or regulation should be is different on each different type of legal system and political context. And I think Colombia is an example where a lot of countries can learn because, and with the SPARC project as well, we're really sorting through different types of issue areas, financial law, land rights, community engagement. These type of things are all being discussed in different types of regulation, and we can learn a lot. A lot of other countries can learn from the case of Colombia. So I want to invite some people to the stage first to take part in this panel discussion. Maybe first I will invite Malin Alberg to the stage, who gave us some opening remarks. Malin is with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. She has a long experience in carbon markets in the EU, including helping set up the EU ETS and with joint implementation under the Kyoto Protocol. So please have a seat. Adriana, if you would like to join us. I think everybody here knows Adriana, so maybe I don't need to introduce too much. And then we have two guests online, and I want to check with our team back there whether they're online and we can show their pictures on their images on the screen. Can they hear us okay? Yeah? Ephraim and Mbai, can you hear us?
Yes. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can barely hear you, so we need a minute to adjust the volume potentially. Can you try to speak one more time?
Yeah, do you hear me?
That's much better, yes. Hi, Mbai.
Thank you.
So everybody who you're seeing on the screen right now is Mbai Dian. He's with the government of Senegal. He is with the Commission for Climate Change there, but he is also a member of the Senegalese delegation to the UNFCCC since 1998. He has played a key role as a member of the LDC group on mitigation and has extensive knowledge on technology transfer and was active during the CDM. So Mbai, thank you so much for joining us today in Colombia to share the experiences of Senegal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mbai. And Ephraim, are you online, sir? No. Okay. All right. So we'll keep going with Mbai for now. Maybe I'll take a seat and we can start. But what we mainly want to hear about are the experiences in the three countries when we get Ephraim from Zambia back online. We want to hear about what the process has been for developing the strategy and especially in identifying authorization criteria. Just in a nutshell, what has that experience been in your country? And I might let Adriana to start. Some people might know that in this room, but good for a baseline comparison.
¿En español o en
Sure.
inglés?
Yes, I think there's a translation online for Mbai, so please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bueno, en el caso de Colombia, pues ha sido un proceso de más o menos 2 años, en el que iniciamos primero identificando cuáles eran estos ítems dentro de las decisiones que teníamos ya en marcha y que pues tendrían que influir en los criterios para la autorización nacional y específicamente cuáles eran los procesos que teníamos que tener en cuenta. Uno de los ítems que quisiera resaltar para esta pregunta, ya que tengo supuestamente solo 3 minutos, es el tema de la selección de la lista negativa y positiva. Cuando iniciamos con este tema de lista negativa y positiva, vimos que realmente no era suficiente y no tenía o integraba todos los elementos que creíamos necesarios para que hubiese una mayor participación e incluso imaginación del desarrollo de nuevos proyectos con unas visiones un poco más innovadoras que lo que ya conocemos hoy en día. Entonces, lo que decidimos empezar fue volver un poquito más atrás y empezar a mirar en dónde queríamos que estuvieran los impactos en lo que respecta en términos de emisiones, y a partir de eso definir las actividades en las cuales se debían centrar sin determinar, por ejemplo, un tipo de tecnología específica, que pues para el caso de Colombia es un tema bastante difícil teniendo en cuenta la complejidad y la multisectorialidad que tiene nuestra ANS, que creo que muchos aquí la conocen y saben que es una ANS bastante compleja y específica, y que pues eso también genera como unas barreras que para algunos pueden interpretarse como barreras, pero para otros pueden interpretarse como facilidad de definir, pero pues hay unos elementos que son bastante complejos, que no necesariamente son fáciles de determinar solamente con una lista positiva o negativa, y por eso fue que elegimos hablar más de un tema de una lista de criterios, y posteriormente pues sí se puede evolucionar a una lista de positiva y negativa. Creo que ese tendría que ser un resultado posterior y con eso cierro mi intervención.
Okay, so in sum, it started off as let's just try a positive and negative list, but then it got more complicated, and we're still trying to figure it out. Yeah, basically.
Tenemos ya unos resultados que pues obviamente en este espacio todavía no los podemos exponer y explicar a especificidad. Esta mañana lo hablamos con algunos de las carteras y sectores, que va a ser uno de los procesos que vamos a tener este año de diálogo con las carteras, para poder definir y tener este año algo un poco más definido y prudente, digámoslo así, teniendo en cuenta que no queremos poner en riesgo el cumplimiento de nuestros compromisos nacionales.
Yeah, I think that's an important lesson also we've seen in other countries. You start developing your positive list, and then you realize it's about the NDC, you have to bring other sectors in. The discussion starts to balloon. So maybe I will bring Mbai in, if we can put Mbai back on the screen. Mbai, would you like to tell us a little bit about what the process has been for Senegal in setting up your strategy and your authorization criteria?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, thank you again, Marshall. Good afternoon, Adriana and Marlene. Glad to be with you today for this workshop. In Senegal, at the early beginning, we clearly stated in our NDC that we will use carbon market to meet our conditional NDC, because we have a conditional component as well as an unconditional component in our NDC when it comes to mitigation. And after that, we were approached by some partners, including Switzerland, that wanted to have a bilateral agreement and see how they can have a transfer of mitigation outcome from Senegal to Switzerland. So we decided at the early beginning, before we have any strategy nor any infrastructure, we decided to have this bilateral agreement, and it was signed with the ministry. But we already had a standardized framework for carbon markets through a project with the World Bank. It was 2 pilots in Africa with Senegal and Rwanda to set up, before the adoption of the Article 6, to set up what we call a standardized crediting framework, which was a framework where we wanted to manage the carbon market. At the same time, we also had some activities under the CDM, and we had a CDM bureau, and we had many other voluntary carbon market projects within the country. Based on all of that, the fact that we had in our NDC, we stated that we will use carbon market to meet our conditional NDC, based on the fact that we had already this standardized crediting framework, we had a CDM bureau, we had many projects in the compliance market as well as in the voluntary market, and we were approached by many other investors seeing what they can do in the carbon market. We decided to develop a strategy, and we approached GGGI, which supported Senegal to develop an Article 6 strategy. And we had very extensive consultation with all stakeholders, from the government, from the private sector, from local governments, from NGOs, from all potential and existing carbon market projects, to develop that strategy, to clearly know what they want from the carbon market, what benefit they can get from the carbon market in terms of developing project, meeting our sustainable development and our policies for poverty eradication. And based on all of that, we developed and had a strategy which defined the framework that is needed at the institutional level in terms of type of project, in terms of organization, in terms of type of voluntary carbon market, in terms of governance, and all of that was validated at a national level with all stakeholders. And in this one, we integrate in the same framework all type of carbon markets, meaning the 6.4 mechanism, called now the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, the 6.2 bilateral agreements, the voluntary carbon market, as well as any regional and domestic incoming markets. And based on all of that, we clearly identify all the need in terms of capacity building at the institutional level, the capacity building in terms of personal resource, and also the capacity building in terms of organization. And based on that, we solicit different partners, including GGGI, in terms of training different type of actors. We approach UNDP in terms of capacity building also, but mainly we approach the World Bank under the Partnership for Market Implementation. And in the strategy, we have already defined all the different steps, all the activity cycle, all the validation process, and all the different capacity building. But we requested to the World Bank through the Partnership for Market Implementation to operationalize all what is already in the strategy, meaning to have all the procedures, to have all the standards, to have all the different steps, all needed to be developed in a very inclusive manner with all stakeholders, including the authorization. And just to let you know, we have different steps when it comes to authorization. The first step in relation to the authorization will be the authorization of a cooperative approach. If the Ministry of Environment wanted to have a cooperation with Germany, a cooperation with Norway, a cooperation with Singapore, they need to negotiate with that partner, but through a steering committee where we'll have the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well as the Ministry of Finance before approving and authorizing this cooperative approach. At this point, we already have cooperation with Switzerland, we have a cooperation with Norway, bilateral agreement, we have a bilateral agreement with Switzerland, we have a bilateral agreement with Japan, and we have another one with Singapore. But all of that need to undergo to this level before being approved and authorized. The second step when it comes to authorization will be the authorization of the activity of the entities. If a stakeholder in Senegal wanted to participate in the cooperation with Switzerland, that entity needs to be authorized by a committee that is in place with the Carbon Market Bureau. We also have the approval of the activities presented by that stakeholder. And lastly, we will have, because we haven't done that at this point, we will have the authorization of the ITMOs generated by the activity that are approved. Since we approve an activity that can be implemented by the project proponent and deliver emission reduction that will follow all the verification process and issue units, and that PP will come back to the technical committee for assessment before delivering the authorization of transfer of those ITMOs after approval of the steering committee. That is, at this point, what I can say in the global process, and open to many other questions to detail some elements. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ephraim. Sorry, Mbai. We unfortunately will not be able to have our friend from Zambia join. They're having some technical difficulties. Oh, sorry. Okay, great. Great. Okay, so Ephraim, are you online? Can you hear us? Okay. No, I think that what we just heard from Senegal is very important. They have moved, pretty quickly to put together their governance framework and their strategy. But I wonder a little bit what the process was on the assessment of overselling risk, because I know that's a really important part of the process in Colombia. Mbai, I wanted to ask you to reflect on that point. When it comes to assessing overselling risk, what was that exact process like internally? What kind of measures did you take to make sure that you would achieve your unconditional NDC and not oversell mitigation outcomes?
At this point, to be prudent, we only allow for the transaction of potential project considered in the conditional NDC.
Okay, and were those measures listed ahead of time?
Yes.
Okay.
We have those measures and those activities and sector by sector. But we will need, in any case, because even if they are in the conditional NDC, when they are internationally transferred, the ITMO will be subject to corresponding adjustment. And that may impact even the unconditional one. Because we don't want it, even if they are in the conditional one, if we don't fulfill our commitments in our unconditional NDC, some of those measures will complement the unconditional one. So in the future, we are working with the World Bank. As I told you, we have a very large support from the World Bank to define a tracking tool that will track the NDC before the authorization is provided. So when a project proponent come and request an authorization for a transfer of ITMOs, we needed to be able immediately to assess with a tracking tool what impact that transfer will have in our NDC achievement.
Okay.
The unconditional as well as the conditional one. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you made the decision to select sectors or subsectors that you would authorize, but in the meantime, you're creating a tracking tool to make sure that at a project level, you wouldn't be overselling. I wonder, Adriana, do you have any reflection on that against the Colombian context?
Bueno, en el caso de Colombia es un poco más difícil porque nosotros no tenemos la parte condicionada y la parte no condicionada. Porque cuando se hizo la evaluación de la NDC Colombia nos dimos cuenta que es muy difícil evaluar la cooperación internacional, realmente cuál es su aporte en la parte no condicionada. Creo que no solamente es en términos de mirar si algo es condicionado o no es condicionado, porque al final está afectando tu inventario. La parte cuando en Valle estaba mencionando que ellos veían que podría haber un escenario en el que la parte incondicionada afectara a la parte condicionada. Eso lo puede hacer de forma cualitativa, pero también lo puede hacer de forma cuantitativa. No creo que todos los países puedan como llegar a un punto de poder determinar específicamente el impacto de la parte incondicionada y condicionada en el inventario, porque finalmente tú estás hablando de que tu inventario puede seguir subiendo independientemente de la implementación de medidas. Entonces se convierte en un ejercicio contable que no necesariamente depende de una caracterización sectorial, y tú puedes tener épocas en las que hayan unas emisiones que aumenten y otras que disminuyan. Por ejemplo, en el caso de Colombia, que tenemos épocas en las que tenemos el niño y la niña y nos toca utilizar el carbón para producir energía y las emisiones se nos aumentan. Entonces, no necesariamente hablar de la parte incondicionada, condicionada es suficiente. Como estaba diciendo en Valle, pues se necesita de la parte del tracking y ahí es donde empieza la parte contable. No para todos los países esa parte contable es fácil, depende de muchas variables. Nosotros también estamos trabajando en la parte de hacer trazabilidad de la NS a nivel nacional y nos hemos dado cuenta precisamente que no es tan fácil, aunque ya llevamos 4 años de avance, todavía no estamos viendo que haya una implementación efectiva de la NS, y por eso es que cuando uno habla solamente de la parte incondicionada o condicionada y unas actividades sin tener en cuenta la parte contable, se vuelve un poquito riesgoso o se aumenta el riesgo de incumplir tu propio cumplimiento o meta de mitigación. Solamente.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, there is a similar approach actually that you're taking, which is to increase traceability of the measures in your NDC. I think that's the key message. When you do that, and how much room for risk you have, I think, is the difference. So I think that we have Ephraim online. Ephraim, can you hear us?
Thank you very much, and apologies for joining a bit late. It's almost 7 p.m. in Zambia, and I was transitioning office that I'm at home now. You put on me or not put on the camera setting is not the best.
Okay.
Yeah, just to share experiences from our under the SPARC. As indicated in the overview presentation that was given, we have developed a carbon market framework under which we envisage
Hello? Yes. I know there's a energy crisis in Zambia right now, so their internet cuts out quite a lot. They're load shedding for like 8 hours a day, so it might be tough to connect.
May I add something, if you allow?
Yes, please.
Yeah, just because I forgot to say that under the support of the Partnership for Market Implementation with the World Bank, we are also conducting, we are in the process of hiring consultants to conduct the marginal abatement cost of all technology that are predicted to be in our NDC. Because in the strategy, we have identified that it will be needed to have this marginal abatement cost of all projects and programs and technology used to be in a better position when it comes to authorize this type of project or the other, depending to the cost of the ton of CO2. And it's ongoing, and that will also inform the final decision when it comes to authorization. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mbai. Actually, we'll do a game later about this exact topic, so hopefully we'll get to bring that game to Senegal at some point for you to play. But yes, so I think we're going to have some technical difficulties with Ephraim, but I want to actually bring in now Malin for a little bit of a global perspective. And maybe it's controversial to ask a question like this, but you know, Colombia is very active, but otherwise we don't see too many other Latin American countries that are setting up their strategies or governance frameworks quite yet, compared to, say, Africa or in Asia. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on why you, from what you've observed, why you think that is the case.
I think that is a really interesting question, and I do not think that there is just one reason why it is like that. And I hope that this also, of course, will change in future. However, I would like to say that there are several hypotheses, what I would say why it is like that. First of all, if we have a look at Africa, I remember very well when Africa was complaining that they have no or few projects during the CDM in Africa, and it was heavily criticized the unequal distribution of CDM project. And I remember also that there were representatives from Africa saying that we don't want to miss the train a second time. And there they have the knowledge of mechanisms, market mechanisms, CDM, Article 6, have increased in African countries, definitely. And they have also become a very active role in the negotiation. Mumbai is here, so he can probably even better explain why Africa is now front runner in this regard. So in case of Asia, I would say they have, they have closer connection to Japan, and between the two, in the time frame when the CDM more or less broke down and the new mechanism was not on the horizon yet, we had the JCM, the Joint Crediting Mechanism, and they made bilateral agreement with several countries in Asia. So I think that's probably one reason. So they are familiar with such kind of cooperative bilateral agreements. Then in case of, if we think of South America and Latin America. I think that is probably, of course, Adriana could answer this question much better than me, but I recognize that they are very active in the voluntary car market and also the domestic car market as well. So, and then, of course, Adriana has already mentioned one reason also is that the NDC, whether it has an unconditional or conditional NDC, this is for sure also a different situation in order to scrutinize and the NDC and to understand how where additional activities could take place and when a mitigation outcome goes beyond the NDC. It's complex to define. But what I wanted also to say when I was listening to the discussion on the positive list and negative list, I think that is a cumbersome process for sure, and maybe it takes time now, but if that is then in place, that will ease up the approval process enormously later, firstly, and secondly, it brings also secure or certainty for the private sector. They can, if they are developing a project, they know what whether they will get an approval or not. So that is a quite important process for countries. At the same time, I would also recommend that a positive list should not be a closed list, and to set up procedures how the private sector could propose new activities. Of course, that is then a second lane to get an approval, probably also longer, but at the same time, you leave the door open for new innovative approaches. Thanks.
Thank you, Malin. So I would like to give Adriana the opportunity to reflect, because I know you work also in the regional context. You know, you're connected with that discussion. So do you have any reflection on this controversial question about why there are fewer strategies or governance frameworks in place for Article 6 in Latin America compared to other parts of the world?
Es una pregunta bastante difícil de responder. Al igual que Malin, estoy de acuerdo que hay muchísimos factores. Uno de esos factores principalmente es porque tenemos desarrollos a nivel nacional que son prioridad sobre un posible mercado internacional. Pero una segunda variable que creo que es importante tener en cuenta es la acogida o los efectos que han tenido los mercados de carbono voluntarios a nivel internacional, y que muchas de estas unidades precisamente son unidades de Latinoamérica y que han tenido problemas en incumplimientos, y eso hace que los países latinos seamos un poco tal vez más prevenidos y decir, paremos aquí, tenemos que primero analizar, generar esta lista de elementos que tenemos que tener listos y después de esto nos lanzamos, o sea, no al revés. Que fue también lo que comentó en Valle, que él dijo, nosotros nos lanzamos sin tener nada y ahora estamos trabajando en que esto nos funcione, ¿cierto? Entonces creo que los países latinoamericanos hemos sido más de el punto de vista contrario, no nos queremos lanzar sin estar preparados y tener todos los límites y salvaguardas listos para que el sistema funcione de manera correcta.
Yeah, that's a really good way to frame it, I think, and I would actually like to hear by your reply to that sort of. When you hear Adriana explain that, from their experience, they've learned to be a little cautious, they want to make sure the right safeguards are in place. Is that a lesson that impacts your decision-making in Senegal, for example? Or do you hear that in other African countries, that you want to be, you know, we need to be careful not to let bad credits, because in the long run, it slows everything down. Bye.
I think we need to make progress and build a strategy, but when it comes to the detailed rules, to the detailed procedures, to the detailed list or positive list and all of that, it will take time to develop all of that. And also we need to know that under the Paris Agreement, we all are in a process of learning. There are many new elements. For example, the corresponding adjustment issue, all the elements for ensuring greater environmental integrity, all the conservativeness of the methodologies and all of that, all is new for everyone. And if you wait until everything is completely adopted and sought out, I think you will not be able to support some project. And when you see in Africa, when you see this conditional and unconditional NDC, there is a huge difference in the potential. For example, when I take Senegal, our commitment in the unconditional one is around 9% compared to the business as usual, while the conditional one is 30%. That shows the potential of emission reductions. That can't be done because there is a lack of many resources, whether they are capacity, whether are technology, they are financial or whatever. There are many barriers and there is a huge potential that the market may evolve in. It's why after defining a very clear strategy on what we want with Article 6, what are the potential benefits of Article 6 for the different type of stakeholders, what are the risks and challenges we will face, and how to approach those challenges, all of that have been addressed within the strategy. And a framework defined and a timeline defined address all those elements. And because we have experience coming from some partners and some initiatives like the Partnership for Market Implementation, we benefit from those experience and those initiatives to move forward. We recognize there will be some mistakes, as we had in any market, but moving forward will allow us to put on place all the corrections that are needed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I want to thank you for joining the discussion. I think it was interesting to exchange on the different, at least continental experiences. And I hope it was interesting to the room. Sorry we couldn't bring Zambia in. Zambia is a partner for the SPARC project. They developed their carbon market framework pretty quickly. I think they're kind of learning by doing is definitely their approach. And I think they would have some great experience to share, but couldn't join us. So anyway, thank you both. And yeah, we'll move to the next session.